Namaskar and very warm welcome to all of you in the very first edition of Perspective. It's a show where you will get a 360-degree view of the perspective of international, national events. Today we will talk about India's telecom sector. India has a telecom subscriber base of approximately 1.2 billion people, which makes it the second largest telecommunication market in the world. The mobile phone industry is also second highest revenue earner for the government of India in terms of income tax. It is expected to contribute 90% of the government's non-tax revenue. But for the last couple of years, the industry has been suffering from many problems. Issues like the right-of-way, which is ROW, the cost of laying fiber, and lack of fixed line penetration. It is also witnessing a declining average revenue per user, or we call it a ARPU, huge duty fluctuations for the telecom equipment, and a lack of telecom infrastructure in the semi-rural and rural areas. But the biggest problem area has been the tussle between the telecom companies and the government of India associated with the adjusted gross revenue that we call AGR. Telecom companies earn revenue from their services, but they also earn revenue from telecom towers, optical fiber cabling, forex, interest incomes, and similar sources. All the companies which enter the market with a revenue sharing model agreement against a spectrum allocation. The idea was to share with the government only the main source of revenue, which were telecom services. But since the word used is AGR, the government has been claiming a share of the total revenue. The case has been in the court for over 16 years, and by 2019, telecommunication company had amassed dues running into lakhs of crore rupees. The matter went to the Supreme Court, where upheld the DOT's interpretation of the AGR. This was, of course, a huge blow to the telecommunication service provider. As the months passed, telecom companies find that they owe interest as well as on dues they accumulated along with a penalty and even an interest on that penalty. The exact amount that telecommunication companies will need to shell out is not very clear, as a government affidavit filed in the top court revealed. But the DOT calculated that the outstanding license fees over 92,000 crore and the actual payout could go up to the 1.4 lakh crore rupees, as the government is likely to also raise a demand for the shortfall in SUC along with the interest and penalty. Of the total amount, the actual dues are about 25%, while the remaining amount is interest and penalties. And 15 operators which owe the money to the government, 10 have either closed operations or are going through insolvency proceedings in the last 14 years. These companies are Reliance Communication, Telenor, Tata Teleservices, ASL, and Videocon. Currently, Indian telecommunication has only 4 players, which are Bharti Airtel, Reliance Jio, Vodafone Idea, and the state-owned BSNL MTNL, which means that the government is unlikely to recover the entire amount of dues owed to it. Of the current players, Bharti Airtel and the Vodafone Idea are the most affected by the order. While the total dues of the Bharti Airtel are about 42,000 crore, for the Vodafone Idea, the amount is approximately 40,000 crore rupees. But Union Cabinet on Wednesday approved a reform proposal for the telecom sector, and 9 of these are structural and very procedural reforms. And among the steps it approved, one is likely to provide immediate relief to the debt-laden companies like Vodafone and Idea. And this is the decision to provide a 4-year moratorium on payment of all dues arising due to the Supreme Court September 2020 judgment on adjusted gross revenue, that is AGR. A moratorium of 4 years of the payment of the spectrum purchase in past auctions, barring the auction of 2021, has also been offered to the telecommunication companies. All these measures are prospective in nature. Prime Minister called this is a watershed moment for the telecom sector. But there are many questions that we are going to raise in this edition of Perspective. And the questions are, will it help the telecom companies to get rid of the financial stress? And second question, that has the 4-year moratorium addressed the AGR issue as the companies were demanding or not? And the next question that comes after the abolition of the retrospective tax, will the present decision further embellish a good image of India or not? And finally, why did not the government buy a stake in Vodafone as was given the impression initially? To discuss in detail, I've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them. I've been joined by Mr. Dilip Chenoy. Mr. Dilip Chenoy is Secretary General FICCI. And my second guest is Mr. Sumit Sharma, who is the head financial restructuring Arpwood Capital. Very warm welcome to all my guests. I would begin with Mr. Chenoy to you. Your first comment about the Government of India's decision to give the 4-year moratorium to the telecommunication companies. Prime Minister is saying it is a watershed moment to the telecom sector.
I think as you said in your when you were introducing the topic, the whole structural reforms and the procedural reforms that have been done by the cabinet yesterday for the telecom sector are indeed a watershed moment. I think there were two issues, actually primary issues, which are facing the sector, and the predominant one was cash flows. And therefore, this moratorium, which has been of 4 years, both on the spectrum purchase and also on the AGR dues, both will provide some breathing space and allow the companies to match their cash flows going forward. So indeed, a very welcome move by the government. I think all the telecom operators will be looking at using this opportunity to strengthen their positions and also address the balance sheet issues that they were facing. And it provides a great sense of clarity along with the other announcements that were made yesterday.
And one more thing to Mr. Chenoy, to you as well. I mean, is it not very clear that penalties and the interest would be waived off or not so far?
Yeah, so actually they have actually given in very much of detail there. I think the interest rates and the penalties actually have been removed from 1st October 2021. Which is a prospective thing, and this is to cover delayed payments of license fee, the SUC or the spectrum usage charges, and of course they have said rationalize it of the MCLR plus 2% instead of plus 4%, so reduce the interest rate by 2%, and instead of compounding it monthly, they're going to compound it annually. So that also makes a very interesting difference in the cash that you have to go. And also the penalty and interest on penalty has been removed. So the quantum also will be because earlier it was interest, penalty and interest on penalty. And the penalty and interest on penalty has been removed. So again, reducing the burden on the telecom companies and also improving their cash flows as we go forward there.
Okay, Ms. Sumit, your take on about this step by the Government of India, how beneficial it would be to the telecommunication companies?
I think it's a very pragmatic step here. It's a need of the hour because many of the companies were still thinking about how to survive the next day. I think this will give them a breather to think not only about the next day, but they can start planning for the next 4-5 years, and that changes the whole scenario because not only in the telecom industry you need to figure out what sort of technology you need to adopt. It will also have an impact on the future roadmap of how telecom evolves in India and its subsequent effect on, let's say, new startups which are going to come up. Telecom has been the backbone so far, and I believe that once you take out these stressed telecom companies which are thinking about the next day, if you put them into a different direction, and the government has oriented that because they have taken out that stress and gave them that window of opportunity to think about something larger in the future, I think that will definitely shift the game for them.
Okay. So, Mr. Chenoy, the next question that comes into the mind of the people, that 4-year moratorium addressed the AGR issue as the companies were demanding or not. I mean, will the 4 years be sufficient enough for the companies?
I think if you go into detailed financial calculations and the quantum of money that is involved, right, it might be a challenge. But like Sumit said, at least this gives a breather for them to look at where they can, how they can, access finance, and with the other steps that have been announced, the 100% FDI on automatic route and all of that. So I think it just gives them both the policy space and the fiscal space and the time space for them to look at restructuring their businesses and looking at cash flows going forward. And I think this is very important because other announcements also will talk about the future, right?
Okay.
So I think that is very important, and the removal of the 0.5% spectrum usage charge on sharing is also a very positive step going forward, because that will also add to the cash flows and other things. I think the challenge in this sector was fundamentally the huge debts that were because of the AGR issue and other issues and the penalty, etc., and the cash flow issues there. So now that to a certain extent has been addressed, but also the future roadmap is also very clear.
Okay. Sumit, what about these at the 4-year moratorium, the adjusted gross revenue, that is AGR? I mean, were the companies were demanding these 4 years, or how do you see it? 4 years would be sufficient enough or not?
So let me just bifurcate my answer in 2 steps. Number one, 4 years is a decent enough fighting chance for these companies to do something about it. It is better than where they were earlier. And at the end of the day, government has also provided a caveat that in case the companies are still not able to, let's say, fulfill their obligations to the government, then there will be a chance where government can convert their debt or obligations into equity. So the companies, at least in some form or manner, will still survive and fulfill their obligations to the Indian government, Indian society, and continue to flourish within India, even though the shareholding pattern might change. So that's one part of it. But you need to look at the whole AGR issue from a different point of view. Let's take a step back. How did the AGR started? The AGR started because government of India wanted to change the licensing fee from the whole tenor to annual basis. And at that point in time, there were plenty of other companies. Over a period of time, let's say the telecom companies have consolidated. The realities are very different now. And this is a chance for government of India to actually align their policies against to the new structure of the industry. Now we have only 3+1 type of structure. We have 3 private sector companies and 1 government company. Just 5 years back, there were around 8 companies operating in the same space. So policies also have to evolve along with the industry. And I think this is a very pragmatic step where they're taking a step along and they're aligning their policies which will suit the current structure. I think that's how we should look at AGR. AGR is again something which has been adjudicated by the Supreme Court. So government is mindful of that. They don't want to step into some other territory. They are changing stuff which is prospective in nature, which doesn't, let's say, get into any other forum which has already been adjudicated earlier.
Okay.
I think that's how we need to look at AGR.
Okay. Government of India is also giving, the 100% FDI, the decision of the government of India. Mr. Chenoy, how do you see the intent of the government? I mean, first that permission of the FDI and now this relief. So in totality, how would you like to react?
No, I think, if you look at this, this is a work in progress from 2007, right? First the cap was 49%.
That's right.
Then they increased it in 2007 to 74%, but it said that 49% will continue to go through the government approval. Then, of course, in 2013, they increased it to from 74% to 100%, but still said the caveat of approval above 49% rests with government. And really, this 15 September announcement that is there of saying that even the 100% will come will be automatic route without government approval, but with certain safeguards, because there are certain other press notes that define, the FDI conditions for the neighboring and landlocked, countries. So I think with all the safeguards it is on the automatic route, I think this is a very positive step. It will give clarity to the investors who are looking at increasing their stake because it is automatic route and it's totally transparent. And like the Prime Minister said, this is also a watershed kind of a moment because it gives the flexibility to the existing telecom operators to look at bringing in fresh capital without trying to second guess or whether the government allow or not government, and given the certain safeguards there. So again, very positive, ease of doing business, clarity of doing business. I think very positive for the telecom companies.
But Sumit, I still remember in 2019, late 2019, Department of Telecommunication calculated the outstanding license fee and the total money, which was approximately 92,000 crore. And the actual payout could go up to the 1.4 lakh crore. But at the moment, only Vodafone Idea, MTNL, BSNL and Airtel Bharti is in the line. Most of the other companies have either shut shop or are in the process of the insolvency. I mean, so government is not going to get the money. So this relief is only for the very limited companies.
I think Sumit actually very clearly, articulated that when he answered your earlier question. He said 8 companies to 4 companies, right? So, we need to actually think of how do we keep 4 companies and keep competition available in the market and choice to the customer. I mean, this is a very interesting kind. If you see the press release that was actually issued yesterday, actually it talks of, the Prime Minister's vision of a robust telecom sector with competition and consumer choice. Antodya is, that word is also for inclusive development.
Okay.
So I think it is a well thought out process, and the idea is really to allow space and time and opportunity for existing players to be able to build on their strengths, to access foreign capital, to plan their financial strategy in such a way so that their customers and all of us as consumers, have at least the comfort that the companies are going to exist, and we are not going to be, lack of a service provider or something that we are currently linked to.
Okay, so if we take
Let me add to that also.
Now, Sumit, after the abolition of the retrospective tax, will this present decision further embellish a good image of India?
Definitely. I think if you look at the steps which are being taken by the government, each and every step is actually in the positive direction, which is reinforcing the trust which investors can place on India. So we are giving more certainty to them. We are telling them that you can come in. There is no approval process in between. We are making sure that the time when you make the decision to invest into India, when the actual investment happens, there will be minimal steps in between. So you are reducing the uncertainty from the point of view of the investors coming into India. Number one. Number two, if you look at you need to look at India, government of India's prerogative from a balancing act point of view. At one end, they are trying to get more revenue from the companies. At the other end, they want to make sure that telecom companies in India not only survive, but they should thrive and actually invest into newer technologies. If you look at the contribution of Indian telecom sector, if they were not up to their mark in last 1 year, in the COVID era, probably we wouldn't have been as productive as this country has been. Probably we could have been in much worse arena. And look at all the startups which are coming into India. They are just building on the infrastructure which is being built by the telecom companies, right? So at this point of time, when we are doing more, let's say, if we want these companies to invest into 5G, we want to get the taste of what sort of new technologies can come into India, like IoT, self-driving cars. If we have those infrastructure available in India, then only a new startups can come in and we can compete with the global competitors. Otherwise, we will always be just following them, and probably they will take advantage over developing those solutions, and we will again be following them up.
Okay.
No, I
Mr.
think
Chenoy, your take on about this. This is very important.
Here.
The vibrant telecom sector is very important for the many sectors. Digital India, Startup India, many more things. So how it will embellish, this decision, India's image globally?
But, I think also just to add to what Sumit said, that, there are 2 players in this. One is the telecom player, they're dues to the government, etc. The other is the financial institutions and banking sector that is linked to these telecom players. I think this whole thing, if this was not have been actually introduced, then a lot of the banks would have been faced with recognizing a huge amount of NPAs, and and this whole companies would again be denied access to funds, etc. So not only does it address certain problems of the telecom sector, it also addresses some very key problems in the banking sector. And I think it comes out that this is a government and that cares for not only the operators but also the financial system, but also for the reputation, because a lot of joint venture partners are involved in most of the telecom companies here. It of course opens up for the opportunity for those companies who don't have a joint venture partner to come in. But again, it is an all-encompassing kind of a step, well thought out, right? And like Sumit said, unfortunately, the Supreme Court judgment and the observations of the court do not permit, a retrospective kind of a thing here in the AGR views, because they've even said that any calculation mistakes will not be corrected. But I think the government has done the best it could do in the given circumstances.
Yeah, the government has done the best that it could do. Sumit, my final question to you. I mean, this news came a couple of days back when Mr. Birla offered his stake in the Vodafone to sell. So now, after this news that the cabinet has decided to offer this moratorium, the question that comes into the mind for the common people, that why did not government buy the stake in Vodafone instead of giving them a moratorium?
I think government purchasing stake into Indian businesses usually is not a good idea. And as you can see, the government is anyway privatizing and getting out of many other businesses. Okay. In this particular case, because of the historical, the legacy issues, the way sector shaped up, we came to a position where this was the only viable option left for the government. And I think government also measured its options and ultimately figured out that probably this is the way they need to move ahead. They will provide the support to the private sector, and to the extent possible, from this sort of support, if these companies can launch up and can get back into the healthier shape, I think that will be the best outcome for the government. Otherwise, I don't think there is an active thought from the government point of view that they need to take some sort of stake into these companies for their operations.
Okay, I mean, are you of the same opinion, Mr. Chenoy, what Sumit is saying?
Yeah, I think, it's very interesting. Although they've kept a window to take equity, but they will then take the equity and maybe divest it later. Because if you look at the whole privatization plan and the announcements made under the Honorable Prime Minister's leadership, I mean, they have looked at the very few strategic sectors in which they will continue to invest and continue to keep the investments, and they're only going to divest everything else. So, but as also mentioned in the cabinet decision yesterday, should there be a default or should there be a issue about 4 years from now, then they can convert that into equity. And then I presume the next step will be to divest that equity going forward. So that will also be a very interesting thing, because the balance sheet will look different if that debt is converted into equity and then sold. So I think it's a very strategically and a well thought out plan.
Okay, thank you very much to both of my guests. So Government of India gave a big relief to the telecommunication sector as Union Cabinet approved reform proposal for the telecom sector. 9 of these are structural and procedural, and among the steps it approved, one is likely to provide immediate relief, which is giving relief to debt-ridden companies like Vodafone Idea. And this is the decision to provide a 4-year moratorium on payment of all dues arising due to the Supreme Court's judgment of September 2020. That's all we have in this edition of Public Perspective. Thank you very much for watching Sansad TV.